Hello, welcome to the online meeting with SWPS University. This is our fifth one out of a series of webinars during which, with the help of experts, we will try to resolve any doubts regarding studying abroad. We try to help you prepare for studying in Poland and answer the questions that bother you the most. As you can guess from the title of the webinar, today we will talk about cross-cultural differences, how they may impact the period of adaptation in a new country, and how to overcome any potential challenges arising from these differences. This webinar is financed by the National Agency for Academic Exchange. My name is Julia Jurek and I work for the admissions office at SWPS University. I'm here today with a special guest, Radosław Stanczewski, cross-cultural psychologist and the director of the Office for International Cooperation. Hello, Radek.
Hi, Julia.
Before we start, I would like to strongly encourage you to check the updates on our website. There is one more meeting to come, which will cover the topic of working effectively in a multicultural environment. My colleague Martina is available to answer any questions you may have in the chat box, so do not hesitate to ask them. Before we begin, let's watch a short video introducing you to SWPS University.
SWPS University is not just an institution, it is a community of people, united in their efforts, their experiences, and their potential. This idea has been our guiding light since our inception, and through this, we believe that as a seat of higher learning, we must recognize problems, recognize possibilities, and take responsibility for finding solutions to challenges. We understand that nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. And only by building bridges between people and institutions, and by supporting our business partners, can we break outdated patterns. We know that numbers are important, but relationships are crucial, and therefore we focus on people. We know that the world is both a beautiful and frightening place, and that we can have an impact on social change. Therefore, we focus on hard and soft skills, but mainly on human happiness. We believe that our university's roots in psychology can provide a foundation for other areas of expertise, that a solid understanding of business allows us to better meet the needs of society, carry out projects and research, provide expertise, and implement innovation that brings together academics and entrepreneurs. That thanks to the processes and technology we implement, we can provide a comfortable work and life environment, even in difficult circumstances like the global pandemic. We popularize science in many, really many ways. And we recognize that these are effects of our work, and this, and this. We believe that this is a well-designed chair, tool, application, experience. And as one of the most active research institutions, we can foster collaboration between the most renowned experts in Poland and beyond. And that the best experts, researchers and practitioners from a variety of disciplines, can specialize in many areas, such as human development, mental health, socially responsible projects, accessible design, human rights, civil society, new technologies such as AI, UX, image management, sustainable development, management, zero waste, eco-packaging, and many other areas. We know that a modern university never stops changing. Therefore, as SWPS University, together with our partners, academic professionals, and students, we look to the future with courage. Not only are we ready for what tomorrow brings, but we can also shape the future. We, the university.
Thank you for watching the video with us. Let us move on to the main part of the webinar and talk about moving abroad. Moving abroad to study is both an exciting and stressful event. It is an adventure and experience of a lifetime, but we have to live far away from our family, our friends, in a city we do not know. Additionally, we are surrounded by an unfamiliar culture, which is much different from the one we grew up in. Radek, how can one prepare for such an event, such a big change in our lives?
It is a big and important change in our lives, and it really depends on what you focus in. So you mentioned that we're away from our family, and that is true, but we're also becoming more independent. We're away from our friends. We're making new ones from all around the world. So this is also a very positive aspect of studying abroad. You said, oh, we're going to live in a city we do not know. We're going to get to know that city, and we're going to find places that are going to become our own. So I think a very important part of preparing for studying abroad is remaining positive about the experience. So we're going away from our family, we're going away from our country for a certain purpose, right? We're going there to study at university, to develop, to gain new skills, to get an education, and ultimately maybe get a good job afterwards. So how we approach the experience is very important. But it's also true that there are differences and in culture and in the surroundings that can be stressful, and especially at first, in the beginning, it can be a stressful experience. So it is important to prepare. For example, log into a webinar like this one to get to know what one could expect, but also do some research before going abroad to study at a university. So research in psychology shows that those who prepare before going abroad, those who do some homework before going abroad, are less likely to experience stress or experience lower levels of stress that those who do not prepare. So I'm very glad that there are people listening and watching us right now, because this is the first step for a good preparation for going to study abroad.
In this case, we are moving abroad for a specific purpose, studies, which themselves can pose quite a challenge, especially during an exam session. University students often say it took some time to adjust to the academic environment, as it is a lot different from what they knew back in high school. International students especially might have various high school experiences, so some of them might find it more challenging to adjust to academic life in Poland. Could you tell us what can one expect from higher education in Poland? What does it mean to be a university student in Poland? What are our obligations and our benefits?
Mm-hmm. Let me start off by saying that Poland offers very high quality university studies that are much more affordable than in other countries. So you can get a very high quality education for a much lower investment than in other European countries. And also the cost of living in Poland is lower than in other European countries. So that's a bit of a win-win situation. The academic year in Poland starts in October, so we normally expect students to arrive at university sometime in September because universities offer orientation programs before the classes start. So it is important to monitor the email for information from the university on such events, because the orientation program will allow students to get to know the university better and learn about the rules and available services. Each university has a different scope of services, so it's very important to get acquainted with those materials before you arrive. Now, what is also important to remember that at a university, you are treated as an adult. You are an independent learner. So it's not like at school where teachers were actually pay a lot of attention to what you do and whether you study or not. Studying at a university is your own individual responsibility. So this is, I think, the biggest challenge and the step forward when moving from high school to university. The courses are a little bit different and classes can be a little bit different. There are certain classes that require very active participation of the students, like workshops and seminars, and students are expected to actually share their opinions, share their thoughts with others, discuss in class, or work in groups, in small groups, on case studies. So There are certain classes that are taught in small groups of students when they learn very practical skills or develop competencies that are necessary to be successful in their future jobs. What I think is also a big change is that you have exams twice a year. So at the end of each semester, there are exams, and it's important to prepare for those and allow enough time to study. So because you are an independent learner, it's important to remember to go to classes in which attendance is not mandatory, because this will allow you to prepare for the exam session at the end of the semester. So I think the biggest challenge or the biggest difference is that we have to plan our own work on the studies throughout the academic years. So these are the obligations. You're supposed to study, and you're supposed to study well, and you're supposed to follow the courses and be present. But when it comes to benefits, universities are a place where that create their own culture. So when you go into university, you start to participate in a completely different culture, and you get to work with people from all around the world, and with professors that are experts in their field. So you can definitely expand your horizons very much. But there's also practical benefits. So students enjoy for example, discounts for public transport, cultural events, and sometimes even food around town. So it's it's a great experience, not only from the point of view of developing as a student, but also as a person and developing your network and meeting new people. And I think this is the biggest benefit of studying at the university.
So as you said, being a student is not just about going to lectures and not just about studying for finals. There's much more to it. So what other cultural differences may international students face while settling here in Poland?
Mm-hmm. So the kind of cultural differences that you notice will depend on where you come from, obviously. So kind of some things can be very similar and others can be very, very different. International students that I work with very often pay a lot of attention to the change in food. So students very, very quickly notice that the food that they can have in Poland, or the typical Polish food, can be very different from the one back at home. So I think it's not better or worse. It's just different. So it's important to remember that. But the meal times can also be different, and what kind of food is eaten for a meal is different. So in Poland, you usually have a cold breakfast and a cold supper and a warm lunch, which is not the case in many other places. There are certain rules of behavior at the university that we must follow. So there is a certain formality in the language. So when you meet a professor, you're supposed to call them a professor. When you meet an associate professor, you're supposed to call them doctor. And the communication style is quite formal and reserved at first, but also with people you don't know. So whenever you don't know a person, you don't immediately become friendly with them linguistically, right? There's also differences in the approach to other people. People in Poland are not very outgoing at first, so you need to get to know them a little bit. So they're going to be friendly, but you need to be introduced. A very important aspect of Polish culture is that is reported by international students is that there is huge respect for rules, and the rules are written. They're all written down. They're made available. You're supposed to know them, and you're supposed to follow them. And one of the symptoms of the rule-abiding Polish culture is that when the light is red for the pedestrians, nobody crosses the street at the red light. People wait for the light to turn green, even if there is no traffic. And this is also one of the most frequently reported cultural differences that international students talk about. There is also some formalities. So in Poland, there is a lot of documents to fill, and you have to go through a formal process to finalize something. So I think this is also very important to remember, that the fact that you had a conversation about something is not enough. You actually have to go through the entire formal process to finalize something. So the written word is very important and prevails over any kind of oral agreement. You have to have it written down.
So you said that we tend to be a bit reserved to people we do not know. And from this, I believe, comes the stereotype that us Poles are quite cold and difficult to make friends with. Tell me, do you feel that this is true?
I don't feel that that is true, but I know where the stereotype comes from. So I very often talk not only to international students, but also international visitors. And they often say, oh, at first you seem so cold and distant, and nobody smiles in the streets, and you just seem so sad. And but then when we start talking to you, you become so open and friendly. And I think this is the reason why people have the stereotype of Polish people being reserved or cold, is because they are not very outgoing. They're not very extrovert at the very beginning. If they don't know you, they're going to be a little bit distant, not because they don't like you. They're just going to be distant because they simply do not know you. So once you make an acquaintance, once you have a conversation with a person in Poland, they can be very, very friendly. So it's just strangers that seem distant, and making friends with Polish people is really not that difficult, especially when you're at university.
While settling in Poland, we have to be patient with ourselves, because as such things as friendships or getting used to the new environment and its rules, it takes time. It is totally fine if you're not all settled in and well adjusted within the first month. It is quite a challenging process. Tell us, Radek, how can we effectively cope with these challenges that adapting to a new culture might pose? What can we do to make this whole experience a bit easier?
Mm-hmm. Well, so before going abroad to study, I suggest, again, to do some homework, do some preparation, learn about the place that you're going to, learn a little bit about the city, learn a little bit about the climate and the weather, because that's important, and be prepared that it might be different where you come from. And read a little bit, or just get to know the local culture and the local customs. So once you arrive, you're then prepared, because when you do the homework, when you do the preparation, when you imagine those situations that you're in, and when you imagine a situation when you come across a cultural difference that you've just learned, it's much easier to cope when you are actually in that situation. So prepare by getting to know the situations that might be difficult to you, and then imagine them in your head how you're going to cope with them. And I think this is step one of preparing. Now, then, when you arrive at the university, and obviously it's super stressful because you don't know anyone, so you have to get to know people, and I think this is very important, and it's hugely significant to build a support network. And that's proven by research. Research shows that students who form friendships with other students when studying abroad again, experience much lower stress levels related to the experience that students who do not. And being in a foreign university and being surrounded by strangers obviously makes it difficult to just it's difficult to just come up to someone and say, hi, I'm Radek, I'm from out of town, I want to become friends, yeah? But there are ways of overcoming that difficulty. So one of such ways is creating study groups. This is super great because when you study with other people and you share what you understood from the course, what you understood from the class, also allows you to understand the material better. So you're not only getting to know other people and maybe making new friendships, you're actually benefiting your studies as well. But also have a look at what the university has on offer in terms of student organizations. There are interest groups, there are student associations, there are research groups at the university. And it's very easy to join one, and over there are other students with similar interests, so obviously it's going to make it easier to make friendships. There are also organizations at universities that are focusing on helping international students settle in. One such organization is the Erasmus Student Network, and in that organization there are local students and also other international students, so it's easy to make friends who know the local culture very well, know the university very well, but also other students who are in the same situation as you are. A very good idea is to sign up for the buddy program before arriving. SWPS University offers a buddy program. As part of the buddy program, a newly arriving student is assigned to a local or international student from a higher year of studies. So a person who already knows the university, already knows how it works, already knows what the troubling situations might be. They've made the experience, and they can share their knowledge with you, and they can help you out in practical situations. Like, for example, you don't know how to use the Center for Student Affairs and you're afraid to go because it's scary, because there's people who you don't know. You go with a buddy and they take you by the hand and they guide you through the process. And the people at the Center of Student Affairs, they're really, really nice. But of course, you have to meet them to know that. So it's easier to meet them when you're introduced by a student from a higher year of studies. But very often, these are also students that will help you understand the culture of the country and the city better. So they will tell you, kind of where's the best Vietnamese place, and where's a good bookstore, and which cinema has cheaper tickets on Monday, and which museum is free on a Wednesday, and so on and so forth. So I really, really encourage all newly arriving students to take part in this, in the buddy program.
At SWPS University, we place a lot of emphasis on practical knowledge. Therefore, many classes are project-based. Quite often, those projects are done in groups, as we see teamwork as an important soft skill that should be developed. Believe it or not, working in a group is not that easy, especially when the group is multicultural. Can you tell us, Radek, what are the key communication skills that are extremely important for an effective cooperation in an international group?
Mm-hmm. This is a great question, and I actually, for a couple of years, taught a course that was called Basic Group Work Skills, and that was a course for first-year psychology students. So I know a lot about this, and I remember everybody, maybe not everybody, that's an overstatement, but a lot of the students that arrived in the first class, in the first meeting, they were either terrified or almost angry that they have to participate in the course on group skills, because they said, oh, you know, I really don't like working in groups. I really don't like working with other people, and it's dreadful because you never know who you're going to end up with. And somehow, you know, throughout the 9 weeks that we had this course, we deconstructed that. So I think it's very important to remember that we are working with other people, and these people, the people who we are working with, also may have certain reservations to that. So it's not that we're the only ones that feel uncomfortable in that situation, right? So I think it's important to remember that and be mindful that also people are different, and some will have certain preferences in terms of communication. Some will communicate in a more direct way. Others will prefer more indirect communication. Some will be more task-oriented, while others will be more focused on maintaining a positive relationship. But in a situation of working in a group, everybody brings something to the table, right? So we all have certain skills, we also have certain competencies, we all have certain preferences towards how we get the job done. So there are certain people who are maybe more creative and they have a lot of ideas, so it's easy for them to initiate work on the project. But they're really maybe not very good at then following up on it or kind of putting it into further steps, you know. So they had this initial idea, but they individually don't know what to do about it, you know, how to progress with it. And then there are other people who are maybe not that creative, and they struggle with coming up with the initial idea. But what they do bring to the table is this ability to put things into practice, to put things into action. So, you know, they will take that idea that was initially developed, and they will put it in a step-by-step situation where we can where the group can actually advance on the work. And then there are people who are really good at taking care of others and making sure that everybody feels well in the project. So they're good at translating a more indirect style to a more direct communication. So in this situation where we have a group and we have a multinational, multicultural group, it is important to understand that there are individual differences, and that they can essentially be a very good thing because there's something that everybody can contribute to the group, even though everybody is different. And then we have the cultural layer. Yeah, so we have culture. We all have our own culture and certain cultural preferences. And this is more challenging because it's easier to understand that people are different on an individual level, but then kind of making assumptions about people's culture is much more complicated. So it's important to take that into consideration. It's important not to assume that something is obvious. It's important not to assume that the way we're doing things, because everybody in my country does it in the same way, therefore it's the way it is done. It might not be the way it is done. So it's important to sit down and talk to people and make sure that you're on the same page. And maybe also make sure that you understand your colleagues the way that they want to be understood. Yeah. So perhaps ask for confirmation or further explanation if you are not sure, if there is even, if you have the slightest doubt if you're doing the right thing. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask questions to clear out any of those doubts. Yeah. Because if you do not ask, you will never know. Yeah? So this is, I think, a very important thing to remember. And don't get discouraged if things don't go according to plan or become difficult. This is completely normal in a situation when you're working in a group, and especially when you're working in a multinational, multicultural group, because we are all different. Yeah, so we have different preferences individually in terms of how we like to work on a project. But B, we are carriers of cultures, and working in a multinational environment is difficult. But then once you go through it, once you do one project in a multinational group, and then you do another project with in another multinational group, it gets easy along the way, because you start understanding, okay, their approach is different than mine, yeah, and it stems from cultural differences, and I have to take it in consideration, and I'm prepared for that. So I think this is. This is what I would advise students in international groups.
Thank you for that. We also mentioned previously the written exams, which take place twice a year. Mm-hmm. And they usually cover a lot of material. They are often, sometimes the material is difficult to understand, let alone to remember by heart. So they take quite a lot of preparation. Do you have any tips on how to prepare for those exams, how to plan study time effectively?
Mm-hmm. The worst thing that you can do is to put it off until the end of the semester. This is the worst strategy.
Everybody does that.
No, not everybody does that, and you shouldn't do that. Yeah. So putting it off until the end of the semester and saying, oh, kind of, I still have 3 months until the exam. It's fine. And then, the house is on fire, and you're panicking. So I cannot stress this enough. Do not put it off until the end of the semester. Yeah. You are asking for trouble if you do. Go to your classes, also to the lectures where the attendance is not mandatory, because when you listen to the lecture, when you take notes, you're already taking it all in. You're already taking in the information from the lecture. Yeah? Go back a couple of times in the semester to make sure if you understand it well. If you don't understand something, ask your teacher to explain. And of course, in some cultures, it's not very well seen to ask a teacher for further explanations. In Poland, it is totally okay. We actually encourage that. So do not worry, and ask the question that you want to ask. Also, if you don't want to ask the question in class because it's stressful, there's other people around there, you might be shy to ask a question. There are office hours. Teachers have office hours, so if you need any additional explanation, you can go and ask the teacher during office hours. Don't overstress it. Kind of stress can be a very motivating thing. So if you are prepared, if you did go to your classes, if you revise the material before the exams, maybe not on the last night before the exam, it's going to be, it can be a very positive, motivating experience, right? To write an exam when you're like, okay, I know the answer to this, I know the answer to that, I know the answer to this. Now, but I also would not encourage to learn everything word by heart. I know this is, in certain countries, this is encouraged, to know a piece of material exactly as it is written down in the textbook. We normally expect our students to understand the phenomena rather than be able to recite a theory, right? So it's important to to know whether you understand the phenomenon, whether you understand the theory, whether you understand what you need to know, rather than trying to memorize things, because this is not going to help you during the exam.
Finally, we all wish for our studying abroad experience to be more than just an interesting fact to share on parties. It's best to take as much advantage of that time as possible so that you are left with much more than just a degree when it's over. Sorry. I seem to have a bit of a technical issue here. Anyway, Radek, one of the ways in which we can, one of the things we can take with us even after our studies are over is networking. How can one start and, most importantly, maintain a successful network of academics and professionals?
Mm-hmm. Okay, what you said about the studying abroad experience to be more than just an interesting fact to share during parties, I mean, it is a super interesting fact about a person that they studied abroad. So this is already step one in establishing a network. You know, kind of you go and meet someone, it's like, oh, you know, I'm studying in Poland, or, you know, I'm from X country, and oh, what do you do here? I'm studying at SWPS University. So I think this is, so studying abroad, being an international student is already a very big step into building an international network, right? But I think that, so the international network will not build itself. You have to be involved in that yourself. So you have to get involved, you have to engage with your teachers, with your colleagues, join a research group, join a student organization. Maybe if you're good in a certain area, maybe try doing a research assistantship, go to a conference, talk to other professors in the field, and very often these experiences that you make through organized groups, like, for example, a study group or a research interest group or a student organization, these are the longest lasting relationships. So this is your network, and so the network that you establish during your university can be immensely helpful. But it's not going to get done. It's by itself. Yeah, you need to be personally involved in it, and you have to be very active. So I encourage all students to be very active during their studies, to be involved in student organizations, because I think this is the key to maintaining a network after they graduate.
Thank you so much for all your answers. I believe our webinar is slowly coming to an end. So I strongly encourage you to check out our website, as there's still one more webinar to come with Radek as well. So you'll get to see him and listen to him beautifully answer all our questions once again. Make sure to register for the webinar so that you do not miss it. You can also book a consultation with our ambassadors, students and graduates from SWPS University. They can share the student experience and talk about the process of moving to Poland, perhaps even in your native language. So make sure to check it out. Martyna will share the link in the chat box. I would also like to inform you that the admissions for the next academic year, which begins in October 2024, so not that late, it's only a few months left. The admissions are already open, so feel free to register on feel free to register and submit your application. The sooner you make the application, the sooner you can reserve and secure your seat on the program of your choice and begin to plan your move to Poland and do the research on Polish culture and Polish cultural differences. We offer a great selection of programs in English, namely management, psychology, design, English studies, and computer science. You can find the details on our website. I would like to thank very much my today's guest, Radosław Stanczewski. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your experience.
It's a pleasure, always.
And thank you, our audience, for joining us today and for all the questions in the chat box. Next webinar will be on July 30th, and we will talk more in depth about how to work effectively in multicultural teams. So make sure to save the date so that you do not miss all the useful tips that we will share. Thank you so much for today, and see you next time.